Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes for the rest of our board to filter in.
We're running the payroll today, so attendance is important to get this right at the end of tonight.
Does it usually
Get your
not?
stipends on Friday. It doesn't always fall on the same day. But right now it does. In October, yeah, it's the 2 weeks, and then our board meetings will be 3-week gap eventually, and then it'll fall off cycle.
Hey, George, good to see you. Always nice when you're muted, too. Just kidding.
Hi, George.
Hey there. Happy Labor Day, everybody.
Happy Labor Day.
Jonathan, you're looking so different in that long hair, spectacles look.
There's no place to get a haircut. So.
Well, help me because mine's getting kind of long too, and I'm scared to death to go to a haircut.
I heard Nancy knows a spot where you can get it done.
Which Nancy?
Pelosi.
Ha ha ha.
Okay. So we've got, let's see, 4 of us. Am I counting right?
I think so.
Okay. And have we heard anything from the rest?
No. Bob usually tells me if he's not going to be on. I haven't heard from him, Father John, or Christy.
I spoke with Christy earlier, and she said that she'd be on.
Okay. We'll give it 1 more minute then, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm going to call this meeting to order, 6:03 p.m. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yes, Director Brandt.
Here.
Director Geis is not here. Director Bertrand.
Here.
Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Hedges is not here. Director Nguyen is not here either, but might be here soon. And actually, Director Hedges just got on. I just let him into the waiting room. And Director Thurlow.
Here.
All right. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anaskoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we're going to move to the consent agenda. And I think that we have a bit more on consent than we normally do. So I don't know if there's an easy way for us to take this, but Jonathan, do you want to say anything about the agenda?
Yeah, obviously this is pretty different, and I meant to send you a note about this on Friday to the whole board just to explain this, but we just had a backlog of special meeting minutes that never went up for approval or needed to be modified. So here they all are. This was meant to be up in April, but the pandemic kind of threw off the plans to do this. So that's most of them. And then the last one is the Ivy Beautiful contract, which is the cleaned up, no other changes besides the cleanup that the board brought up last time. But I think it was asked if we could just put it as a consent. But they've already started operating. So, but just putting this on here just so that you all see it again as the final.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So I can say with 100% confidence that I know I was in attendance for all these meetings and I'm good to go on my end of approval, but I know that not all directors might be in the same place. So I don't know if we want to take these one at a time or if directors want to pull specific items that are on consent that they'd like to abstain from or vote on.
I was also in attendance for all of our meetings.
So I'll move approval of the consent agenda, barring anybody who wants to pull any of those items off.
All right, there's a motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any public comment? I see that Bob, it looks like, is joining us as well. So we'll give him a second to connect to the audio. Okay. Any other board discussion? Okay. Bob, we're about to vote on approving the consent agenda. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Hedges,
Yes.
Director Thurlow,
Yes.
and Director Geis.
That was a yes for me. I was muted.
Thank you.
All right. Motion passes 6-0 with 1 absence. All right. Very smooth. Now we're going to go to public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to speak on any matters that are not on today's agenda. The board will not take action on any item except as provided for by law. Are there any requests to speak on things not on today's agenda? Okay, I will close the general public comment period and we'll move to discussion and action items. So the first is the Police Brutality and Anti-Racism Working Group update. Jonathan, do you have anything that you want to begin with?
Yeah, I just wanted to update you all that we did receive the data request that we made from Ivy Foot Patrol. So thank you, Lieutenant Cameron is on this call for getting that to us. So that can now begin. We can start analyzing it. We're obviously a little off schedule now and how we had originally set this up, but that's totally okay. And so now, this calendar is just reflected to show what has been on our agenda already. And some of the ideas that were brought up, they still have dates in the future and we can still work with these. But if there's anything that's more of a priority, we can move them up and down the list as needed. But wanted to update that project has made some progress now and we'll be coming back to the board with a report as soon as we're able to analyze all the data. It is a huge amount, so we're going to be working on that now.
Great, thanks for that update, Jonathan. And I know one of the items what some of the items that we have on there specifically for us to speak about today are on our agenda. So it's good to have the schedule item on here as well, just to make it broad so that we can all see what's coming up. But I don't think there's anything else that I would share that's not covered in the other two items. Any other members have any requests to speak on this item? Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. And we're looking forward to getting the report on the data back. Thank you to Lieutenant Camarena and to the UC Police Department as well for the data that you were able to provide to us. And we're looking forward to that report coming back to us at a future date. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the district COVID-19 response. So I'll again hand it over to Jonathan if you have anything that you want to begin with.
Yeah, so there's a lot has happened since the last board meeting, and I think there's going to be a lot more concrete progress that we can report on at the next one in September, since there's more happening this week. But what I can report that what we've done as a district since August 25th, since we last met, is we noticed that there was a huge amount of different kinds of responses going on to the issue of COVID-19 to stop the spread. The resources are one issue, but we started to put together a working document that kind of puts together all of the different responses from different government and community groups to help, people not spread the virus or to react to folks who violate the health order in any way. So that's become a really helpful tool, I think, for everybody who's involved in this work. So that that's been our role that I've been trying to get us to do. We can't do the actual response for a lot of this. We can at least make sure that the response is going the right way, is going to be effective, and we're not duplicating things and meeting the gap that exists. So we've been using this. We're constantly adding to it, and people are changing anything that I was having inaccurate in there, or anything that's changed on their end. But we're really trying to figure out, having a really solid answer on here. This can be a place where you can get answers. If I report this party to this link, reporting link, what's going to happen? There wasn't a lot of clarity on that, I think, even a week ago. So we did that for our purpose, but we can start using this to help educate others and get everyone on the same page. We've also started putting out, we met, Spencer and I met with a bunch of different community groups last week as well on the outreach issues, just to figure out more of how we can do better outreach. We have launched another ad or it's replacing a current one, to help inform the community on the reporting links, since we found that not many people at all knew that those reporting links even existed. So those have started running. One just started right now. I just got the email that it began. And so that's one of the feedback we got from people, is that no one knew that these links existed. And there's some other strategies that are being thought up of, but that's been the main focus, is trying to at least coordinate and get everything in one place, just so that we can, there was 100 different email threads and discussions that were going on. So trying to bring some centralization to that. So that's what our response has been for the last 2 weeks.
George, did you have a question you wanted to ask? I think you're muted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is this the right time to ask questions, or later?
Go ahead.
Okay, so here are my, Jonathan, I think you and the CSD are doing a terrific job. Over at the university, I keep being asked, so what's the CSD doing? I said, well, the CSD doesn't have any authority. The governor and the county and the health department and the CSD is just trying to do as best a job as it can. And what I would say is Jonathan and others, don't be shy about telling the community what you're doing in terms of education. There's definitely a backlash that's going to occur here pretty quickly, which is Isla Vista is going to get blamed. I probably said this 2 weeks ago, but Isla Vista is going to get blamed for the business shut down. Okay, everybody's going to forget about Santa Maria. Everybody's going to forget about the prison. Everybody's going to forget about the jail. They're going to try and blame Isla Vista for the fact that we're still in purple, not in red. So I think the CSD at least needs to be out in front on this. We need to, Jonathan, we need to get some answers on this Ventura test myth. There's a myth out there right now that Isla Vista residents are going to Ventura to get tested in order to stay off the radar and not engage in tracking. I really don't believe that, but that myth is out there. And so if we need to kill that myth if there's a way to do it. UCSB, we need more transparency from UCSB about testing. At the press conference today, the county, and Ethan may be able to add more detail, but I seem to hear that the county is going to ask UCSB to be more transparent about its testing, particularly if people in Isla Vista turn out positive. So I think we need to stay on top of that and push UCSB to be as transparent as possible about testing and results so that we can stay. And then I think there's a tendency out there right now, I'm noticing, to leave the CSD off the list. And I don't know if you're experiencing that, Spencer or Ethan or Jonathan, but my sense is that CSD needs to be invited. That all of a sudden the attention is going to be focused on Isla Vista, and CSD needs to push itself out there and be front and center on any discussions about what's going on in IV. So anyway, that's my quick and dirty. Thank you. What's your feelings about that, Jonathan?
I mean, I think I definitely have noticed we have been left off some things and put on others, and we're doing the best we can to be in all of the conversations because it's been clear that when we get involved, we help make things more effective because we provide the local voice. So, you know, a lot of people are catching up to what we've been involved in for a few months now.
I would just add that I think coordination is so important right now. There are a lot of cooks in the kitchen that are trying their best to promote the message of physical distancing to residents of Isla Vista, but sometimes there's duplication of efforts that happen, or there's not coordination where there should be. So I know, I think I've just hats off to Jonathan for doing everything that you've been able to do to try and reduce that duplication and get things as coordinated as possible with all these different efforts. I can say for certain that if you would have told me a couple years ago that in the fall of 2020, residents and students alike would be reaching out to me, asking me how they could tell on their neighbors for having parties, I would have said, you're crazy. There has been more outpouring of community support for the message of physical distancing and for the imperativeness of us continuing to follow the rules than I've seen so far. And I think that is a really good sign. The majority of residents on Isla Vista are trying their best. They are staying physically distant. They're washing their hands. They're wearing their mask. But the truth is that it doesn't take that many residents to make a big dent in taking us backwards. And I think that I had the opportunity to just go and walk around on a Friday, Saturday night this past weekend to observe what was going on. And there continue to be large gatherings that are concerning. I think maybe not to the degree that there was a couple of weekends ago, but those gatherings are still taking place. And one of the things that I have spoken with law enforcement about that I observed was that there were a number of these large gatherings where there were sheriff's deputies present outside in front of the gatherings, and they were had made a number of stops to residents, ostensibly for minor in possession or open containers related stops. However, there was no contact made to try and educate the residents of those that were throwing gatherings about the illegality and inappropriateness of their behavior. And it does raise a huge question in my mind of how we are going to be able to get the message out there to the people that are still not adhering to physical distancing if we're not even trying. And so I'm wondering if law enforcement, if you all can sort of share, what your strategy is, because I've heard different things from different people about what the role of law enforcement is right now. And I think that the community wants clarity on what that is.
Well, can I respond? I mean, the CSD is giving mixed messages about law enforcement. So, I mean, on the one hand, we're saying, hey, we need law enforcement to help us on this education campaign. And on the other hand, a few minutes later, we're going to say, we don't want to have anything to do with law enforcement. We want to actually not fund them. So in my mind, as a quasi outsider, I think the CSD is giving mixed messages on the role of law enforcement. But I would say this, Jonathan, based on what you just said, I'm very encouraged by what you said. I think you need to get out in front of the community with that message, which is, hey, our community wants to be healthy and safe. And actually, this is what's going on out there. Because again, we're not being heard. I mean, KYT is about to do another big story about how Isla Vista is the next hotspot.
Director Bertrand.
Thank you. So George, I appreciate your comments, especially in regard to the concern about a mixed message, but I just want to back up Director Brandt and say that we're not trying to make a mixed message. Our message is that we're hearing from law enforcement that they are very concerned about COVID-19 in the community, that they are wearing masks, and that they are working to prevent the spread in the community. But on the street, that's just not what we're seeing. And we know that that's the intent, but we're just trying to make sure that what is intended and what is promised to the community is what is taking place.
So I don't know if anyone from law enforcement can speak as to what your strategy is at this time right now. Again, I'll just echo this is really a big question that I'm getting from a lot of residents.
I think again, the strategy is definitely something that's still being worked on, with UCPD. Right now we're out there several days a week in Isla Vista at certain spots, passing out masks for free, trying to do some assistance that way. As far as some of the other end, I think some of that is still in talks and being worked out in different channels. But as far as at the lower level, we're trying to assist with handing out masks and letting folks come up and talk to us and trying to open up the dialogue within the community. It's been met with some success. We've handed out quite a few masks. And we're going to continue to do it until we're out of masks, and we probably got 900 more masks to go. So hopefully that has some kind of a positive impact within the community and makes us more approachable for people to come up and ask us those questions that you may be getting as well.
And shout out to the University Police Department for doing that, because I've seen it out there and that has been a great effort. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Millard.
Hey, Spencer, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, this is Juan Camarena. To answer your question regarding what is a strategy regarding all these large parties, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is we just can't go into people's home without having a legal standing. In other words, regarding the two addresses on our conversation earlier that we had via email, one of the things that, and I'm going to check with my supervisors, but one of the things that we need to understand is we have to have legal standing in there. If the deputy sees a gathering and, you know, they need to make that determination, is that violating the public health order or not? And if it's violating the public health order, our first stance is education. And I've been out there, not this weekend, but the weekend before, when there was an increased amount of large parties with no regard to face masks. Our first stance is education. Our second stance is issuing citation. And as a last resort, we will do, we'll take action and do arrests. But our strategy is to do education. And sometimes, depending on the houses, if we believe that the small crowd of 7 people, 8 people are all residents of the house, you know, we just can't barge in there and say, you guys need to separate. So there's some legality here that the deputies have to have in mind, instead of just going into people's homes and say, okay, we have no legal standing, but you guys are doing something that actually are not doing anything illegal. It kind of makes sense. But our first stance is education.
So, Lieutenant, I guess my follow-up question would be, when does that education take place and when does it not take place? Because I think the concern that I'm having and the conversations I'm having with residents is a frustration that it seems like law enforcement is more interested in giving out these minor tickets than they are with trying to stop these super spreading events during a pandemic. So what is there a standard? I mean, is it a number of people that law enforcement will then engage in education? Because I think that that's the right strategy. But I'm just concerned that it's not getting done.
And I will follow up with, like I mentioned to you, with their supervisors to figure out these large gatherings or the parties you guys are seeing. But one of the things that I would ask, if the public sees a gathering, to call. Sometimes the staffing of the deputies or other calls for service, maybe we don't have all the staff to go to every house and say, you guys can't have a party. So that's one of the things that we see there's a challenge for us. We don't have the staffing. I mean, we only have we had 6-7 deputies working last weekend, so that's not enough staff to handle all the other calls. So one of the things that I'm going to be checking with the sergeant is these calls, you know, what is the numbers of people outside? Is it your typical 20 plus people and they have loud music, you know, your typical IV, or is it just 4 people or 5 people that live in the same apartment in front of their yard, you know, listening to music? So that's all the things I'm going to be looking for, and I will get back to you regarding that information.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I see a hand from Director Freeman and then from Director Thurlow.
Sorry, if I wanted coffee, but I should put myself back on mute before making a loud noise for everybody. So yeah, I have a few things to address here. One of which is that maybe actually to almost help George's point, but I'm not that interested in trying to specifically even ask cops, particularly with the procedural attitude that oftentimes comes with that, to be trying to do the front line of this. I do at that same point agree though with the way that Spencer and Ethan are framing it, in the sense that it seems very strange in the prioritization level of what is actually happening versus what we might expect. And then from my perspective, I kind of almost use that as an argument for this idea that I would rather find other organizations to use to go out and do that. And so I would like to try to think through it. I mean, I'm not certain what other organizations are like, what other county government processes or what we should be trying to do, but I would like to try to figure out how we can more formally ask some other body in order to go and do that educational process. Maybe that's, and we've talked about that here at our board. Maybe that's us, but I don't know if it's, I mean, it's not, it doesn't fall under any of our powers though. So that's why it feels like maybe it's something we should be trying to get county public health to do. It's something that I think that can be involved remotely sometimes. But the response that we've currently been getting has been, I think, somewhat confusing. So I've seen UCPD out, and I've seen them do educational outreach events and giving out masks and wearing masks. Great. I ran into them. Actually, I was so tired. I probably barely even was able to was barely processing speech at the time. One morning, I ran into them, and it was great seeing them out there. On the other hand, though, I've seen the sheriff's department people going out there in large clumps, essentially looking almost like they're trying to drag them at the street, not wearing masks. And it's not even clear to me what exactly the goal at the time was. I did not feel comfortable at that moment with that way that they were acting, just to stop and really try to interact with them. Also, because it was a particular time of night. But maybe in the future I will. But I guess I'd like to figure out how we can best figure out how to do that educational process for these large groups. And then I'll go and I'll kind of say something I said a couple meetings ago, which I've got a different phrasing now, which I think might make it interesting. It's this idea that when we look at other types of things that we try to solve in our community, and we look at things like Halloween, and we look at potential dangers involved in Halloween or large events, a lot of times the strategy that we take is alternative programming. And so in the past, I've mentioned this idea of trying to figure out how to look at the kinds of reasons why people are going and trying to do in-person parties at this time, and trying to figure out what kinds of remote alternative programming is required in order to really at least minimize some of that. And if it were, for example, the case that we had some kind of comedy hour that was scheduled that was via Zoom, or we had various like Woodstocks does their quiz show things that they do, and if we could figure out ways of doing like the Woodstocks trivia quiz show, but we could do that via Zoom, and we could schedule these during prime party hours in order to try to make it so that there was something exciting for people to get involved in and do, that might help. But yeah, I do feel George's point, because I mean, here I am contributing to this mixed message concept with relation to sending police out there, and this idea that like I actually have a concern in some sense that it's like, okay, well, I need to figure out my legal standing in order to go and barge into a party, as opposed to knock on the door and mention, I mean, as anyone can, right? I mean, you don't need legal standing in order to knock on somebody's door and say, hey, and have a conversation. But of course, even that, I don't really want the police doing that, because they're going to show up armed with a gun. It's going to cause some kind of tense confrontation on the other side. And it's the exact same sort of things that I've been railing against trying to do in that standpoint. So I don't know who it is, public health, but what? Yeah.
Director Thurlow?
Jay, you're coming around. I love it. There's a total contradiction here. We need the cops to solve this problem. The fact is, this is not a cop problem. And the last thing in the world, this organization, which in a minute is going to be talking about too many cops and the bad cops and everything else, we should not be in any way asking the cops, the police, to deal with this problem. This is a social problem, and it goes back to the county health department and the state of California need to help us solve this problem. It's not a police problem. It is not a police problem. And let me tell you the two leverage points you have. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. Leverage point number one, University of California. Okay, they over and over again, they say, we have no jurisdiction, we can't do anything. Oh my gosh, don't want to, hey, across the country, students are getting kicked out of school. Their tuition is not being refunded, and they're essentially being told, you are a danger to our community because of your actions. All right, the University of California at Santa Barbara could do that very same thing tomorrow. They don't want to do it. Okay. Number two is landlords. You need to shame these landlords. You need to say, part of the reason why the rest of the business community in Santa Barbara can't open is we've got a bunch of landlords out here in Isla Vista who are more interested in making money than in whether or not your business can reopen. Those are the two pressure points. And, you know, as much as I'd like to put the lieutenant on the spot, I can't. This is not your, we need you to respond to 911. We don't need you to respond to irresponsible 19-year-olds. Thank you. You know, and that's it. I've used it all up.
Director Bertrand?
Thank you. Well, I definitely agree with the part that we do need to work more with the landlords. This week, for the first time, I saw some good actions from landlords. Maybe they'd been happening all along, but I finally saw some decisive action from landlords that were sending out notices of violation to tenants that had especially egregiously violated the health officer order with hosting social gatherings, including those properties that we observe having unsafe gatherings over and over again. So I think that's a start, seeing some of the landlords take a tougher approach there. But I think that's a smart idea, George, that we really need to put the spotlight on that property owners, especially out of town property owners that couldn't care less about what's happening at their businesses in Isla Vista, where the folks that they are providing housing to are getting sick and are potentially spreading the virus. So I think that's important. I also agree that we do need to see educational interventions with UCSB and Santa Barbara City College. And I mean, we obviously want to promote the success of everyone in our community, including their educational success. But right now, there may need to be wake-up calls for folks who are not doing their part to prevent the spread of the virus. So those are definitely two ideas. And I mean, earlier I mentioned, along with Director Brandt, that the concern is just that we want to make sure that what is being said is being done is actually what's happening. But bigger picture, I want to impress to the group and express that most people are doing the right thing, and that's the result of education and outreach. So I would 100% agree that our biggest focus is not on enforcement. Our biggest focus needs to be on how do we get buy-in from the community, which is often accomplished by trusted messengers. So thank you to Jonathan and Deborah and our team for doing our outreach campaign. I know that we are getting a lot of exposure online. I understand that we'll be doing door hangers for the whole community in the near future. So if you could give us an update on that, that would be great. The work that we're doing for our homeless neighbors during this time continues to be very important, as that's a acute issue that's popped up in Isla Vista as a result of COVID-19. So we are doing a lot of great things. I know it's taking up a lot of our staff time. So I thank you, Jonathan and Deborah, for that. It's probably going to take up a lot of our focus for a long time. So that's also something that as a board, we need to be cognizant about. I know we have a lot of plans for this year, but COVID-19 is at the top of our list. So I'll leave it there for now, but thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Is there any other board comment? Okay, with that, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item?
Hey, Spencer, this is Juan Cameron again. One of the things I want to bring up is I'm working on compiling a list of all the different addresses that we have responded regarding large gatherings, and also on all the calls that we've been regarding loud music with large parties. Once I compile that list, I'm going to provide that to the CSD and also to the university and county, and that way we could approach it from the education point and also provide that information to the landlord. So that's what I'm currently working on behind the scenes.
That's great.
Thank you for that, Lieutenant Camarena. Is there any other public comment? Okay. Well, I will bring it back to the board for any board discussion. I'm glad that we had this discussion because I think that it's very informative, and I am appreciative of all the work our staff is doing as well. Like I said before, there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen here, and we just want to make sure everyone is playing their part in a way that is the most productive and able to answer some of these tough questions and the, I guess, contradictions that people in our community may see in the way that we are all responding to this. So I don't know if there's any recommended action here today. I think we just wanted to have a discussion. But with that, I think we can close. Or is there a hand from Ethan?
Yes, just one quick question for staff. At our last meeting, we spoke about how you were in communication with the Office of Emergency Management about notices or letters that would be mailed out to properties that were potentially in violation of the health officer order. Do you have any update on how that is being implemented?
I think, can you all?
Oh, you're cutting in and out.
Can you? Is it better? I mean,
We can-
I can hear you better now.
Can you
You're cutting in and out, Jonathan.
hear? Oh, okay. I'm trying to call in with my phone really quick to answer the question. This is a complex answer, so. You all hear me now? Better?
Yes.
That's better.
Okay. Perfect. The question was about the letters and the response from the Office of Emergency Management. We're not exactly sure where that's at right now. I think that was part of what last week we were trying to go back and forth and trying to nail down what the, what's actually happening and what it actually looks like. We've seen the letter, we provided the feedback. UC Santa Barbara is doing a letter with the form that they have to make reports. I think what we've tried to talk to folks about is let's combine the reports, possibly have one letter maybe go out instead of two, which makes it more confusing. But we're hoping that Stacy said that she was who runs the Office of Emergency Management, said that she would be organizing a meeting at the end of this week, which we haven't heard yet about, to talk more about the response to people who complain on the form. So there's still ambiguity on exactly what happens and how and when. So we're still trying to nail that down. But I think our understanding last meeting was not, I don't think to our fault, but was not 100% correct. So it's still, the situation with them is still evolving.
Okay, so glad that's still being worked out. And then also, are we still doing door hanger messaging? Is that still something that is going to be coming online?
Yes, that is in the plans, and Deborah's been, that's her project, but I think we haven't had a chance to get that one going yet, and we'll time it around the 20th of September to go out when, closer to when school date starts. So maybe more people might be in town by then. So by the time we design and print, that'll be when we get them.
Sure, cool. Well, let us know how we can help as far as volunteer recruitment or anything like that.
Yeah, we'll do. Volunteer recruitment has not been great. We have volunteers. We've tried to direct them some of the opportunities. I don't think they've shown up to any of them. So we definitely need
any additional volunteers would be great.
Okay.
Jonathan, can you share any updates on the new residential RISE Ambassador program? Have they reached out to you?
Yeah, I don't have any updates on what they have done this week, but they're going to be scheduled to be in Isla Vista at certain times. So they were supposed to be out yesterday, maybe. Today was their first day this week, officially supposed to be here. They're going to be doing a few different things. Their main priority is to help the businesses with their attestations to reopen. They're going to visit property owners with safe practices guidelines, and then they're going to hand out masks and then assess the community sentiment on taking them, because what they told me was their first day out here, like maybe at the end of August, was no one wanted masks. Like unmasked people did not take the masks or did not receive that message well. So they're going to try again, and they didn't take notes last time to kind of gauge why. So they're going to be doing that and sharing it with us.
Okay, but as a follow-up, we haven't heard anything about the new residential ambassador program that the county is bringing online.
Not at all. About that from you, never from them directly.
Okay, thanks. Director Thurlow?
Just a follow-up, there's some confusion out there about quote-unquote ambassadors. Jonathan, can you kind of clear that up? I mean, the old UCIV program and the student ambassador, can you kind of, tell us once and for all, because there's apparently some confusion going on out in the community about, everybody keeps referring to, well, the student ambassadors.
Yeah, no, that's a huge point of confusion, and I think we solved that by the end of last week with this list that I made of all the different kinds of responses going on, and basically I said if it's not on here, it's probably not happening. So please get it on here, and I asked all the relevant parties. But the only group that's out in Isla Vista right now with the title ambassador is the Santa Barbara County RISE ambassadors.
Okay.
We are not deploying anybody with that title. What was shared with us by the Associated Students executives, the student leaders, is that they're going to have a van that's going to drive around Isla Vista and pass out PPE and messaging, but that seemed like it was going to be done by staff and not by student volunteers, maybe, but it's going to be staff driven. So the UCIV is not a part of this response as of now, as far as I know. So
okay.
the only ambassadors are the Santa Barbara County RISE ambassadors.
Okay, thank you. And will you send us all that list that you put together?
Yeah, well, I'm still working on it. It's just not really ready to be a public document yet. But it has a lot of comments and corrections from people, so I will send it to you when it's ready.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, Director Thurlow. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the board? Okay, then with that, we will close this item and we will move on to item 4.3, which is contract with UCPD for interpersonal violence investigator. Jonathan, do you want to give a synopsis of what we're considering today?
Spencer, can you put me in the timeout room?
Yeah, that's my job. All
right.
In there. Okay. Yes, synopsis. So we've had this item. Let me make sure this is on. We've had this item in front of us since June at this point. As you all remember, at first the board voted to approve an amendment, hopefully starting right away on July 1st, we weren't able to negotiate that in time, so we had the status quo go on till now. At the last meeting, the board voted to, at the August 11th meeting, the board voted to extend again through September 9th, which is tomorrow, and give us time to negotiate the amendment. We had an amendment that the board had passed the amendment in on June 23rd, and there were some back and forth edits that were pretty non-substantial. The main change and the main line, as you'll see it's highlighted in the attachments, is on F, the first bullet point under F on the attachment, and that is on the outreach commitment of the interpersonal violence investigator. So we've had several discussions with UCPD leadership on this, and it doesn't seem like we have a consensus on the language that's going to be in here. So that's why we're bringing it back to the board, because we have direction from the board on what you passed and what we're going to advocate for, and what we're hearing back from the other party is that might not be amenable exactly that way, and so we're bringing this to the board to get your response on where we want to go with this. And what I've attached are both contracts are pretty much the same exactly. They reflect the final negotiations on all of the bullet points, except for section F, the first bullet point, and that's where we need to finalize this and see where we agree or disagree. And the point here is that the point of the bullet point in general is that we want the interpersonal investigator, as she has done in the past, to continue to meet with community organizations and provide presentations on prevention and education of the services that she provides. This has been, a core part of this program since day one. We've gotten the reports from her, from UCPD on, visits to the fraternities or the sororities or a sports club. After the board passed Resolution 20-9 in June, it said that our law enforcement contracts had to focus on racial equity or promote racial equity and justice. So as part of this contract, we said, well, a lot of the groups have been not necessarily focused on racial equity or justice. They've been, very similar in demographic, that, the ones that have been trained or talked to. So we put in this qualifier that, we should prioritize community groups that are focused on racial equity. So that's where we've gone back and forth on. The UCPD submitted their final version on August 27th with as a replacement for that, as these presentations will involve groups committed to the fair treatment of all races with the intent of providing equal reporting opportunities and outcomes to all. So that's what they submitted to us, and what we had, advocated for was these presentations will involve groups committed to racial equity, or you could put, racial justice, or reduce the adverse impact of the criminal justice system on communities of color. So all these three qualifiers are pretty similar and would have worked for us. So we haven't, we've gone back and forth. We haven't heard back. We haven't had a conversation since last week at this point. But we put both of these on the agendas so we could see where the board is at this point. What UCPD provided us sufficient, or do you want us to extend the status quo agreement again and continue to advocate for the racial equity provision as put out in Resolution 20-9? So that's where we're looking at right now.
Thank you for that synopsis, Jonathan. And I'll just add before we start discussion that I spoke with Chief Brock earlier today on the phone and let him know that I'm going to continue to advocate for our version of the contract. And I think he's potentially planning on having another version shared with all of us in the future. But especially given that we are up against the deadline, I'll just say at the outset, I think we need to continue to advocate for our version of the language here. I saw a hand from Director Freeman, so I'll go over to you.
So one thing that kind of struck me while trying to get an understanding of this language changes is that the fair treatment with equal reporting felt, I don't know, it almost felt analogous to the All Lives Matter version of the like Black Lives Matter, of where you look at like what equity is defined to be, where it's where we're bringing people to a equal place as a, potentially by unequal means, as opposed to providing equal means and leaving them potentially in an unequal place. And so I really struggled, and the more I researched into this, to trying to feel comfortable with the language that was proposed back, trying to get an understanding of what the goal was of the language change. That was something that I know I'd asked in an email, was what they may have said regarding this change, like what their concern was. One thing I thought of is the idea of trying to almost like figure out where the line is, like would hold up an example group and be like, would this be a group that you would not consider to satisfy your definition, but would satisfy our definition? And then use that as a way of determining if it's more of a language usage difference as opposed to a particularly strong meaning difference. Then after thinking even harder, trying to come up with what possible meaning differences could occur, I started to wonder, I know that it's currently, with as far as the state of California is re-looking at affirmative action, and maybe the UC is under a particular like legal press standpoint, that they're trying to avoid any terminology that would, before that gets potentially voted in, that would lead to something that might feel at all like that. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what's going through their head. I say is there may be people who are involved in this on the other side in our audience, but their head on wanting their version of the wording as opposed to ours, and I'm still left just not sure, and I guess also confused as to why they can't, or it could be that we just didn't ask correctly. But why they don't just tell us, well, here's what's wrong with your wording and here's why we want ours. But
yeah, I did ask your question, Jay, and ask, in my last communication when I said, here's where we're going, and could you please let me know why this change specifically was made? So I haven't heard back. I don't know if Spencer, you got that answer in your conversation today.
No, I think what we spoke about today was, I think, what Director Freeman just mentioned, which is that the importance of the phrase racial equity, because it communicates something very important about racial justice that the other language does not. And also reiterated also the context, which is that we're talking about making sure that the outreach that the interpersonal violence investigator is doing is targeted, and that this is not really above and beyond what is already being asked of that position in the contract. Rather, it's focusing that existing outreach in order to make sure that it is on these student groups that I think often get left out of the discussion, or aren't the ones that services are proactively reaching out to. I know I hear a lot from residents who are involved in certain types of organizations that are related to athletics at the university campus, or Greek life and other types of organizations, and they get tons of outreach. But some of these other sort of often newer grassroots student groups that are focused on racial equity and social justice issues don't. And so that's what the goal of that language is. I think that it is really not a whole lot to ask, and I think that we should continue to push for it. Director Bertrand?
Thank you. I appreciate the comments of both you, Spencer, as well as you, Jay. Racial equity it's important, and it is different from just the fair treatment. of people regardless of their race. Many of us have seen the different photos or diagrams that show the difference between equality and equity. Equality, you're treating people the same, focuses just on that, where with equity, it's about treating people with what they need. And what they need is really determined by what opportunities they've been given and also what barriers they've faced. And that's something that's important to be acknowledged when we're designing programs involving law enforcement and how we keep our community safe. It's important that we're recognizing the needs of diverse community members and the barriers that have historically been in place that have led to different outcomes with justice involvement in our community. So I definitely think that we should continue to move forward with this. And I also think that there are a lot of examples of this at UCSB. The UCPD is a department of the university, and the university just earlier this month appointed their first vice chancellor of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Within the past 2 years, the university created the Office of Black Student Development. These are just two examples of efforts by the university to promote racial equity. So I'm confident that we can move further in this discussion to make sure that we're promoting racial equity here as well.
Yeah, this is Dave Millard here, and I must have just spoke with Chief Brock moments after you did, Spencer. He asked me a few questions. I weighed in and said that I think we should consider using the term racial equity. I mean, what we're looking to do is we're looking to increase success for all groups and develop some goals and outcomes that results in improvements. So I weighed in. I think he's still going to think about it and probably get back with you all. But I think that hopefully he strongly considers it. So we can develop some strategies on what I've been hearing here, and some targets based on the needs of particular groups, and to make sure we touch base with all those that we can. So hopefully it's coming soon, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thank you for that, Lieutenant Millard. I think that is a very positive development. Look forward to hearing more. Are there other board members that wish to speak or any other comments on this item?
I guess my only question then, if it seems like we're wanting to delay again and keep negotiating, would it just be another 2 weeks? We want to give it till the day after the next board meeting?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I get the feeling that we're getting closer here, and with the meetings that we've had, we've cultivated some more understanding of what we're trying to do. So I think 2 weeks would be a good term for an extension. Director Bertrand, I also saw you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I have one more comment related to this, and it's an observation, doesn't need a response, but I feel compelled to bring it forward. A big thing that has been at the forefront of our minds since the creation of this program was the need, and is the need, to make it clear that when survivors come forward, that they will be treated with respect, that they will be heard, and that they will be cared for. And this has for a long time been an issue, not only in our community, but in many communities when survivors come forward to law enforcement, to universities, whatever the case may be. And this weekend, the university put out a statement from the administration, Andrea Estrada, in response to an allegation, which is now a lawsuit, involving a university student worker alleging that they were sexually assaulted by another university employee. And the response by the university in the media was very dismissive of the allegation, demeaning, and quite frankly, offensive to survivors who need to be respected when they come forward and through the process of fact finding. So I just want to put that out there, that now more than ever, it's so important that our programs really take this seriously, because they're, even though there are so many great efforts happening at UCSB and happening in the Isla Vista community to respect survivors and to stand up against sexual assault, there are still missteps that are taking place. And I think it's important that we all hold ourselves accountable as we're working in this space to point out those areas that we still need to do a lot of work in, because what we saw this weekend was not acceptable. And I would hate for that to interfere with people who could really benefit from these services, but are deterred from coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that important comment, Ethan. Are there any requests for public comment on this item? Okay, with that, I would bring it back to the board for a motion to extend the contract.
I'll make that motion.
I will second.
Motion made by Bertrand, seconded by Freeman. Is there any other public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for a roll call vote.
Cool. Give me one. Am I on mute? Okay, great. Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Hedges,
Yes.
Director Geis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 with one abstention or one absence and one recusal. Thanks, everyone, and looking forward to that returning at the next board meeting. Okay, I do want to actually skip around on the agenda because I think there might be an item here that I neglected that we have some folks here for, which is to item 4.6, which is the California Community Compost Alliance membership. And I'll hand it over to you, Jonathan.
Great. Yes, and I think Sienna and Chloe are still on the call, who are two of our leads for the Compost Collective program. And so we've been working on a lot of different things for the Compost Collective. One of them was getting in touch with one of my old-time friends who helps run the LA Compost, which is a major nonprofit in LA County. And we had a great time learning from them, like I reported to the board a few weeks ago. And they recommended that we join this statewide group just to help us share resources. And I think already we've learned and gotten a lot of good information from them just on, I think you might have heard we were trying to buy an electric bike. Looks like they have a lot of resources just to help you do that. So this is a great group to join, no cost or anything to the district, just makes us a member and lets us share information. Turn it over to Sienna to see if you want to add anything. And she's going to be our representative going to the, I think, monthly calls, and will check in with me on how that goes.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I think you covered everything. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, this is really exciting.
This is Kirsten. I just want to stick up for my my brethren over at UCSB that he's not included. He's not been let back in.
I just did.
Okay.
Thanks for the message. Your message got me to do it.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten.
You're welcome.
I will just say, I think this sounds like an excellent opportunity for program and leadership development. And I'm very excited that we are able to get our Compost Collective sort of connected with the California statewide organization. Jonathan, does this membership, my understanding is this doesn't have any fees. This is just a sort of organization joined for professional development and program development. That's great. Well, with that, then I'm very excited to entertain a motion if anyone has one. or if there's any other.
This is a motion to authorize the application or to.
Yeah. It would be to authorize us to fill out this form and sign it on behalf of the district that we want to join this group.
And we would be authorizing staff, or we'd be authorizing Spencer, or we'd be authorizing.
You'd be authorizing staff.
I will move to authorize. Actually, no, I don't have the name of the thing in front of me. Got it here.
Was that a motion?
That I'm trying to move. I've not succeeded yet. If anyone else wants to do it, I've got it now. Okay, I would like to authorize staff to sign the, to sign the application for the IVCSD Compost Collective, potentially joining the California Community Compost Alliance.
Second.
All right, there's a motion made by Freeman and seconded by Thurlow. Is there any public comment? Any further board discussion? All right, Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Director Brett?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Hedges?
Yes.
Director Thurlow?
Yes.
Director Geis?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with 1 absence. Thanks, everyone. Okay, with that, we're going to go backwards to item 4.4, which is the Halloween 2020 discussion item. I'll just share that I was on a call earlier this week with some officials from the city of Goleta, where they were talking about their that they're going to get started in their planning for Halloween, and had asked the county if they could collaborate. And I reminded everyone we would like to be included in that too. We want to make sure that whatever planning for Halloween is done with the community in mind first and foremost. So I think we wanted to have this discussion because more so than ever now, with the spread of COVID-19, we need to make sure that Halloween and our holiday weekends in Isla Vista are safe, and that people are continuing to adhere to the physical and social distancing rules, and that we keep our community safe and healthy. So, Jonathan, I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to sort of introduce this item at all that you can share.
No, nothing specific to add, just that, what we're looking from the board is what you would like, what you're thinking our role should be, and what we can start preparing to work on as part of this. Obviously, we'll just, at bare minimum, participate in all these discussions, like Spencer just mentioned, and shove our way in if we need to make sure the community is represented. But if there's anything specific that the board is looking for us to do to respond to Halloween 2020, make sure it's a safe weekend for all the different reasons, please let us know.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Do any board members have anything that they'd like to add? Director Freeman?
Do you know if any groups are looking at doing alternative online remote programming?
That's a good question. I know I had heard, and this could be a rumor, but I'll ask because we've got 2 great reps from UCSB here. I had heard that it might be more difficult for student groups or the university itself to do programming due to some of the public health restrictions. Do you know if there are any student virtual programming that's on in the works?
I would let Kirsten answer that. Go ahead, Kirsten.
So I would say yes. The university is prohibited from doing any on-campus events. Obviously, you know that. And my understanding is that Associated Students was looking into doing a virtual concert or some type of virtual program.
Excellent. Well, that's good information to know. And I don't know if there's anyone here from Associated Students maybe that can speak a little bit to that.
I can speak a little bit to that. And I don't actually think it's Associated Students doing the concerts. I think it's Student Affairs though. But I think they're planning on doing one both Saturday and Sunday, both 2 days, a remote concert. And then the EVPLA was just talking today about what kind of resources they may be thinking about putting out in Isla Vista, looking at maybe just adding a bunch of hand washing stations and some, mask and mask distributions and things like that. Staying away from the restrooms like they normally do. Thinking about water, not sure on that one, but just today was the initial discussions, and that's why I heard about the 2 concerts on remote concerts.
Well,
That's about all I know.
Well, thank you for that update, Rodney. That's good to hear. And whether it's Associated Students or Student Affairs, I agree with the sentiment of Director Freeman's comments that the more we can do for programming, the better. And Jonathan, I don't know if there's any way that that we can sort of assist in that. I know we've got, in our budget this year, we do have some programmatic money, and while COVID has sort of put some of our community center plans on pause, is that funding available and could potentially be, leverage for something here when it comes to Halloween?
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I'm sure if COVID wasn't happening, we would have thought of an event at the community center as an alternative to help, with the Halloween weekend this year. So I think if we imagine it that way, as in a virtual event at the community center, we could try to figure something out. It's just that we don't have a lot of, on top of everything else, to plan an event and figure it out. Wouldn't be us. We could maybe fund or help fund someone putting on an event at our, as the community center as a home base, but it's actually virtual.
Great. I'll go to Bertrand and then Thurlow.
Thank you. So Jonathan, I'm pleased to hear that there may be some creative ideas that we can develop for alternative programming. And one that comes to mind right now is, just thinking about how we want people to contain their fun to their household. We want people to have a good time, but to be safe and to only be physically with those that they live with. Maybe if we could work with community organizations to put on some sort of virtual costume contest where people do household costumes, where everyone works together with their households to come up with an awesome entry for this contest. And not only would it be a fun way to celebrate Halloween, but also to raise awareness about physical distancing and COVID-19, and how all of us still need to do our part to prevent the spread while also having fun. Something like that could be open throughout maybe even all of October, so that people could participate over a period of time, work with local businesses to come up with some cool prizes. And maybe that's a little bit of a fun way to raise awareness about COVID-19 while also giving people an outlet to celebrate Halloween.
Yeah, great idea.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. Just wanted to jump in. I love that idea. Anything we can do programmatic wise. And I would also add, maybe this is something, I'm happy to reach out to our friends at Lucidity that we sort of have embarked on this, or been embarking on this journey of trying to make events, large events in Isla Vista safer. And maybe now is the time, maybe they have some virtual programming, something that would be enjoyable for residents. So we can look into that as well. But I don't want to cut off Director Thurlow, so I'll go over to you.
Yeah, I just had questions for those of you that are have better connections into Isla Vista, Spencer and Jonathan and Kirsten. No, not Kirsten. What are you hearing? What are you hearing on the street about Halloween right now? Ethan, you're smiling. I mean, is there any kind of chatter at all out on the street? And also the other question that is a great mystery right now is everybody moving back into Isla Vista? Do you sense that the community is repopulating?
Sure. So I have not heard any chatter about Halloween in Isla Vista up to this point. And a couple of weeks ago, before we've seen some of these larger gatherings, I frankly didn't think it would be an issue. I still don't think it'll be an issue if we get out ahead of it to really turn the page of making sure that those limited gatherings that are happening right now stop. So I think that that's an important focus of just really hitting home the message for those few people who are still holding those parties. But other than that, I think we're good, and it's going to be an event that's celebrated at people's homes with the folks they live with.
Yeah, and I would add to the second part of Director Thurlow's question just about Isla Vista's fullness in general. I think that we're seeing that Isla Vista has been full for a while and is now continuing to become even more full. I've now heard reports of we will have some freshmen moving into Isla Vista because of the decision to limit on-campus housing to only those with special circumstances. And so we'll have a full house. But generally speaking, as far as Halloween goes, I will say one thing that makes me feel good is that I heard the planning, or the first time I heard the word Halloween this year was in a government meeting and not among residents planning a giant party. And I think that that echoes how it usually is. Over the last couple of years, we have seen Halloween has been a non-event. I know I walked down the street just a couple of years ago on Del Playa. All the cars were cleared out. People had gone out of town, and there was no one left. It was a quiet night. So I echo Director Bertrand's comments and ultimately think, yeah, if there's a way that we can help assist on the programming side, I really want to do that in an aggressive way, because that ultimately is what we've seen is the best way to try and make sure that people stay safe.
So what, Spencer, just real quick to follow up on that, what's a sense of your millennials in terms of Halloween in the middle of the pandemic, as a broader, not just Isla Vista, because I mean, maybe everybody in Isla Vista goes home, or they go downtown, or what's your sense about the millennials and this Halloween?
Well, I would say again that it's not really on people's radar. And we've got millennials and Gen Z now, George, too. We've got the Zoomers as well. They're here.
Well, they're just kids. They're just kids.
And we're going to give them representation as well.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, ultimately, programming is our best bet.
Okay.
Figuring out how to do that safe and socially distant is our task.
All right. Thank you.
Is there any
fun fact? The youngest millennial is now 24 years old. So.
Well, then I'm not even a millennial. So.
Well, as that 24-year-old youngest millennial, I'll say that I personally was very excited to rock a Tiger King costume this year, but I know I'll have to do that virtually. So I think a lot of us are just seeing that Halloween is going to look different this year. One more thing I'll add as a serious note is this is an important opportunity for the housing providers to step up, to really be proactive about what's happening at their buildings. Historically,
Agreed.
Some of them have, and what it's looked like in the past is people putting up fences and hiring security guards. And I don't know that that's the right thing to do, because I think we're very far past those types of issues that occurred in many years ago. But right now, with the current concern, I think that property owners do need to communicate with their tenants about the risks of any sort of gathering at their their home. And the property owners need to be making contacts at their site to make sure that things are looking good.
Agreed.
Great comments, Ethan. So with that, I think that it would be good for us to take some action and maybe sort of, I don't know if we can make a motion that includes sort of exploring the ways that we can help assist in developing programming. I want to be cognizant of the fact that between everything going on with the emergency response, our staff is at capacity, but I think seeing ways that we can look into helping assist with programming would be a good thing to do, as well as continuing our dialogue with groups that are connected to housing providers about what they can do to help prepare. So I don't know if anyone has a comment.
I'll make a motion on move to direct staff to continue coordination with other community groups to ensure that we have a safe Halloween.
Okay, that's a motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
Well, second.
Okay, that is seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any other board comment? Okay. In that case, Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yeah, Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Yes.
Director Hedges,
Yes.
Director Thurlow,
Yes.
Director Geis.
Yes.
All right. The motion passes 6-0 with one absence. So with that, we're going to go to item 4.5, which is the Community Policing Fund. Jonathan, you want to introduce this item?
Yeah, this was one of the ideas or topics for discussion that came up back in July when we were making our list of discussions to have. And so one of them was to discuss the potential uses or elimination of this Community Policing Fund. For a bit of background, we've had this fund, I think, in 2 or 3 of our last budgets, and it hasn't been used in any of the fiscal years yet. And we've usually had it sit there. We'll wait for people to bring proposals to us that we will then fund. And by people, I mean law enforcement agencies, since that's the only thing we're able to fund. But we haven't had anything funded directly out of this before. The social media intern was something we discussed, but it didn't end up happening from the Community Policing Fund. So this is just following up on that item to have a discussion on this and see what we want to do with this $30,000 pot of money that's in our budget.
All right. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Do any board members have any comments or want to start the discussion? Director
Yes,
Bertrand?
Spencer, if I may. Thank you. So I think this is very much in line with what we've heard with our constituents, what we've heard from our community members who have taken to the streets, who have spoken with their neighbors, and who have written to us saying Black Lives Matter, and that we need to equitably advance public safety, and that can be done in ways that do not just involve traditional efforts of law enforcement. And I think IV is an important place for us really to advance that. Law enforcement certainly has a role to play in keeping our community safe, and we're right now working together to make sure that that can be done in a way that is just, fair, and equitable. But that really is just one piece of the puzzle to establishing a community where people feel safe, where people feel that they will be treated with dignity, respect, that they will be healthy. All issues that are really important right now. And with that, I think it's important that we do invest in building community as much as possible. And there's a lot of great potential that we have with the opening of the Ivy Community Center and the programs that take place in and around that, along with other initiatives that we're working on with our partners to really build systemic change and make Ivy a safer place holistically in ways that do not involve policing. So that's why I'm very supportive of us moving funding from the Community Policing Fund back into our community programs budget, where we can do really awesome work to make our community safer in a way that invests in community programs. One example of this, and this is a goal that I want to speak more with you all at future meetings, is looking past COVID. I'm really excited about the opening of the community center. When I look at the public safety issues that we have in Isla Vista, so many of them occur on weekend nights when it's been described as in the past as just people out in the streets partying with nothing organized to do. And what I really want to focus on is how can we create high quality events that attract people in Isla Vista, our residents, to have fun in a safe way. And I think that really includes activating our downtown area for more than just going for late night meals, whether that's live music at the community center, working with groups such as Jeffrey's Jazz Concert and First Fridays, working with local businesses to empower them to create experiences in their locations and really bringing to life our downtown area around the Loop and Pardal. I think we have a tremendous opportunity to make that change in something that's community building, something that creates a great experience that ultimately makes us safer. So that's just one example of how we can make our community safer by investing in community programs, which is why I support us moving the funding to the community programs part of our budget.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Director Freeman?
Did we end up, did we end up having a determination on how many board members we need to vote yes in order to make this budget change?
Ross?
In order to move categories around, you need a majority of the board. A supermajority, or actually more than that, a 4/5 is when you are moving money out of reserve funds.
That's what it was. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. For that,
and by
Ross.
the way, I'm very in support of this. So thank you, Ethan.
Spencer, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, George.
Jonathan, are these funds that have been, are these UCSB funds or not?
No.
They're not?
No.
Okay.
UCSB funds only go for the, well, not only ever, but right now only go for the safety stations and the investigator and the COVID kits.
And the COVID, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I will echo some of the comments that have been made so far. I'm supportive of this, and I think that I don't know if there's a whole lot that I can add to it. This has been just such a topic that of discussion over the last couple of months at our board, and I think that this is a good way for us to start making sure that our budget reflects our values. And I do also recognize that while we have had this item in our budget now for 2 years, it hasn't been utilized and drawn from, which I think is good. I think our intentions were in the right place. But ultimately, I think that the concept of safety is a holistic concept. It's not just one agency or one category of society that is responsible for all things safety. Safety is something that we build, that we work together to build, and that ultimately the funding that we have allocated right now for the community policing fund can be better, can still serve the ends of safety, but it can do it in a much different way, from a different angle than we may have anticipated in the past. And so I'm very supportive of this. Are there comments from any other board members? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Any public comments on this item?
Hey, Spencer, it's Deputy Schroeder. I'll just chime in real quick. As the Community Resource Deputy of Isla Vista, community policing is my only job, and so I'm very passionate about it. I realize we haven't used those funds in the last 2 years, and you guys don't pay my salary, but I think the way forward is community policing. I agree with the comments you guys have made as a board, but I also think community policing should be forefront. So I would, as a public member and talking to other citizens out in Isla Vista, I think it would be a bad look removing the community policing fund as a step backwards. But you guys do what you got to do, and I'm here for you.
Thank you, Justin. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak?
Hello.
Hi, Julia, go ahead.
I would like to echo Deputy Schroeder's comment. This is sort of a broader comment and piecemealing on the some of the previous topics, but what I did notice that since I would say mid-April, which is when the student population started to move back and Isla Vista was sort of 2/3 or 3/4 of the way full, I did notice that the level of mainly intoxicated, belligerent behavior and just overall feeling of lawlessness was palpable. And at that point, there was no community policing. UCPG had been pulled from Isla Vista, and I know that the foot patrol was understaffed. And Goleta deputies were coming over to respond to specific incidents. So I do believe that community policing is very necessary. And I've noticed that even the last weekend, where we can see more sheriff vehicles going around, I do believe that their presence helps preventatively. So I think that is important. And it's not just one thing that sounded troubling to me is a comment by, I believe George said that he wasn't sure if Isla Vista was going to be full, or maybe a lot of people are not aware that Isla Vista has been full for a long time. And these isolated big parties that have made the news, or that maybe a lot of people are only aware of them because they make the news, are not aware that there's a lot of partying that has been going on in the mid-range, mostly, the 20 to 50 people partying that has been going on for a long time. I see them, and I'm not even in the 65, 60, 100 blocks. So I am concerned. It did seem like because of the public pushback, and there's a lot of things on the news that hopefully some peer pressure is going to work. But anyway, to sum up, I do believe that community policing is necessary, and it will help with the issues, especially with COVID now. That's my piece.
Thank you for those comments, Julia. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak?
Hello, I'm Ash. First off, I want to say Black Lives Matter. Second, how do we know that you've really thought this out? Thanks.
Thank you, Ash, for those comments. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? All right. With that, I will close public comment, and we will bring it back to the board. I see a hand from Director Freeman.
Thank you. And one thing I just kind of want to point out is that it's not really like when you go into a discussion of budget and it looks like you're, for example, cutting things from the budget, it might feel like this is money that is currently being spent on something and that is going to be directed to something else. And as has been stated, and as Justin from Sheriff's Department completely admitted and noted, this is a budget line item that we've simply had with an interest for years now that we have yet to actually allocate. And in some perspective, you could argue that from the way the government budgeting works, we should have something that we're intending to spend it on and then budget for it and then spend it on it. And so we've kind of done here is now for years held open this hope of something that we might do. And so what we're looking at here is not cutting something that already exists or decreasing something that happens. To the extent to which you've seen any cuts in the community, they haven't come from us. They've come from the Sheriff's Department just deciding to have fewer people out there, the UCPD deciding to have fewer people out there. And to the extent to which then the expectation might be that, well, we should start dipping into our budget in order to fix, bring back to the previous levels of community outreach or support that might have been out there. That's also something that we both are hopefully very much trying to avoid doing as our district, and also are kind of legally supposed to be not happening, because there was a big concern that what would happen is that our district would come into existence and then things would start getting cut and then they would look to us for our budget. And so you then can look at the history of what we had this budget item for. And the idea always had been to try to find some form of alternatives to policing operations and try to find ways of bringing more civilians in to replace things that police were previously doing in order to have a different model of police. And that then is again something that I'll say this year, there was a little bit of shift in that, because we started having more concrete plans for things that might be not plans, but concrete proposals coming forward to us for things that we might do. For example, one of the things that was listed was potentially using guardians for certain, the private security agency, for better or for worse. I'm not saying that was something that I was fully supportive of, but that was a proposal to come forward. And then during the budget cycle, I'd asked a question of our lawyers, to the extent to which we want to do these sorts of things that we've been doing, now that we have some concrete proposals, would this have been something we could do? Would this be something that we could do? And it's like, well, no, because we really are supposed to be focusing, but not focusing. We legally are only allowed to contract specifically for additional police protection from either the Sheriff's Department or UCPD. So I don't really look at what we're doing today as a massive shift or something that anyone in the community who's concerned about policing should be concerned about. This is more just us trying to figure out how to accomplish the goals we've already had with the money that we're trying to allocate towards things, making our budget align, I think, better with what we're able to spend and how we have been spending it. And frankly, if somebody were to come forward to us with a proposal in the future for something that seems like it would help a lot, I'm certain that our board would be interested in this. Not me speaking for the board, this is me speaking for myself as a board member, but feeling confident in how I feel that our board tends to react to things, that we'd be very interested in seeing those sorts of things and reconsidering them and maybe moving budget items back if we have to. But to the extent to which there's a reaction from anybody saying like, oh no, don't cut police or something right now, that's not even what we're doing today. We're just messing around with a spreadsheet. So.
Thank you, Director Freeman. I'll go to Director Hedges.
Community policing is an elegant solution to so many things that have ailed us for a long time. And to in any way step back from a robust affirmation of that fact. We may argue that this is just a shuffling of some line items and so forth. But yet on the other hand, the message that will be sent from this is that we can do better than community policing. And community policing is a noble idea that hasn't yet been given the opportunity to fully come to its maturity. But yet what's seen there is a bridge to the future. And as much as I would affirm that Black Lives Matter, as much as I would affirm that many aspects of current policing need to be revisioned, and I hate to just be a one issue vote, but anything that in any way steps back from robust support of community policing, particularly as we've experienced it here with current personnel, I could not support.
Thank you, Father John. Do other board members have comments? Okay, I guess I'll just give a little bit of a follow-up to my synopsis, and I guess say that if we acknowledge that because this money has been in our budget and it has not been utilized for the last number of years, that in many ways this is a symbolic vote. I think personally that further fortifies my position, because I think that while many folks, Father John, Justin, and other folks in our law enforcement agencies have an idea of what community policing is in their mind, and the way that we can move forward better and positive relations, I think that for many people in Isla Vista, that vision is not always borne out. And the appearance of us having a blank check in our budget for law enforcement agencies is a message that I do not want to send right now. I think that we can ensure that we can use this funding for holistic safety in our community, because we all share those goals of safety. We all want to live in a safe community, in a community where everyone has the opportunity to grow and thrive. But at the end of the day, I think it's time for us to think about the different ways that we can achieve those goals. So I will be supporting this item and the reallocation of this funding towards the community programs budget.
Yes, and Spencer, if I can follow up on that, and apologies to everyone, I had some technical difficulties and fell off the call. But this really is about making folks feel safe in our community. We all share that value, that people want to live in this community where they are safe. And what we know is that we have not succeeded as a community in that endeavor over the years of just focusing primarily on the law enforcement side. And I know that we have a lot of dedicated law enforcement officers in our community who are proud of their work and have done heroic work in our community in many cases. But at the same time, it's okay for us also to acknowledge that there are many community members who do not feel safe in the way that we currently achieve public safety, who have not been served by business as usual approach to maintaining community safety, and who view that we need to do something differently. And I really want to look forward to how can we move beyond some of the systemic issues that we've had in Isla Vista, be it alcohol and drug emergencies, be it gender violence, be it issues regarding mental illness and inadequate resources and response for mental illness. Those are some of our most pressing safety issues. And when I look at what do we do to really make a difference in those issue areas over time, and not just respond to the individual emergencies, it's by investing in a more resilient community, which is why I'm so excited to support this. And I hear the concerns of folks who worry about crime in Isla Vista. And let me tell you, I'm someone who has been very close to people who have experienced violent crime in Isla Vista, and it's something that's horrible. And at the same time, in my conversations with these community members, they're focused on how do we make a safer community, a community that's more healthy. And a lot of times that focus is not on how do we get more police officers on our street. It's about how do we strengthen our community resources to help people be safer in our community and be more connected to our community so that when they need help, they're able to get that help. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from with this. I also think that this is very much in line with the demands for racial equity and the movement for Black Lives Matter, which is why I'm supporting this. So with that said, I would like to make a motion to make a budget revision, moving funding from the Community Policing Fund to the Community Programs Fund.
Moving it from the community policing to.
There's been a motion made by Bertrand, and I will second that motion.
Yeah, really quick. Sorry, can you hear me? Ross informed me that we're going to need to do this by resolution, so we could have this motion direct me to prepare that and bring it back to the next meeting.
That's great. Thank you.
Friendly here as well.
Is it going to have to, if we, when it gets brought back to the next meeting, are we going to have to vote on it again at the next meeting and it'll be separate vote? Ross is nodding his head.
Yeah.
In some sense, I mean, I guess if no one really wants it now, it avoids both the work and and maybe you can manage to squelch it now, but it does seem weird to bother having two votes if we can just have one vote on the subject.
Right, and the government code section is 61111, and that indicates that the adjustment to a budget after the budget has already been passed has to be done by a resolution. So that would be the reason why.
I'm not questioning. I'm not questioning your legal opinion. I was just saying that if in that case we could, I mean, you could argue that we should just continue this to next time with the resolution, although maybe that's just a lot of work. And is that the reason why we would vote now in order to avoid the work? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not necessarily. If that's what the board decides it wants to do, that's certainly an option, is to table and pick it up at the next meeting. But it's at the president's discretion on whether to entertain that at this point.
I'd like to call for the question.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say that I agree with the premise that we're discussing it now. Let's take a vote on it now. We've had a robust discussion, and I think great arguments have been made on both sides. So.
And Jonathan, can you read back the language that you have in the motion?
Yeah, give me 1 second. So the motion I have, inserting the resolution part of it to what I heard you say, is a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution to make a budget revision for the elimination of the Community Policing Fund and transfer to the community programs budget.
All right. That's friendly with the second if it's friendly with the maker.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's call the question. Jonathan, can you do a roll call vote?
Yes. Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Hedges?
No.
Director Thurlow?
No.
Director Geis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-2 with 1 absence. Thanks, everyone, and we look forward to that item being brought back at the next meeting. Okay, with that, we are going to go to item 5, reports, and we'll start with reports from members of the board. Any members have reports? Director Freeman?
I have two things to bring up, one of which is, and this is arguably a report from a month ago. I don't remember if I actually said anything a month ago. I want to remind everyone about it, that that there was a meeting a month and a few days ago of the Local Agency Information Commission looking at whether the response to our letter to them requesting, with our legal statements to them, was going to lead to them sending the response that their lawyer drafted back to us. They did vote to do that. And so I believe we now officially received it. I had the letter before, so I just want to make certain we officially received it, and maybe we should agendize at our next meeting before it potentially comes up at the next LAFCO meeting, that we could at least have read and looked at, and as a board, analyzed in some sense the response that we got from LAFCO. So
yeah,
arguably that's also skipping into next agenda. Okay, cool.
That's the plan for. It was gonna make it to this meeting, but we're gonna do it next.
Great. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up, which is something that, so I've been attending meetings, a different, just joint set of meetings from similar meetings other people have been attending with relation to houselessness issues in Isla Vista, and particularly recently looking at encampments that people have. And I just want to report that at the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District meeting last week, the encampment policy they put together was affirmed by the board, but the weirdness of it was that during that meeting, the Isla Vista Community Service District's name was brought up numerous times as having been particularly supportive of it, and my understanding is that we are participating in a working group, but are not actually officially providing any standpoint on that, and so. It just felt weird to me hearing the name of the board be used as that. Individual directors I know were, and potentially, maybe like 1.5 were in support of it at the meeting, but it's different from the board having made a statement like that. And so I don't know if that's something that we have any interest in looking at. There's interesting complexities there, but I just wanted to at least say it during one of our meetings that I felt a little bit weird about it.
Thanks, Jay. And I will just clarify for the board that we did receive a request from the Recreation and Park District staff to take a formal position on the drafted encampment management plan. We had also received a strong request from their staff to keep the document private while it was being developed. And so ultimately we honor that request, and because we would have had to have made the document public, and that was against their wishes. So I share your concern with the way that our district's name was used, and agree that for clarification, the district did not have a position on that document.
Yes, we actually explicitly let them know we weren't providing any feedback in any way in order to avoid our endorsement or perceived endorsement.
And then I realized this may be related, but a different topic is that my understanding, and I'm not actually in this meeting, my understanding is that the county has now withdrawn from running the Isla Vista encampment working group meetings. I don't know if during Spencer or Jonathan's report, they're willing to provide any more information on what happened on the meeting last Friday or subsequent to that, which we may have learned from the county. With relation to the county stepping up and doing stuff about the conditions in Isla Vista, not like whatever those moves are, is the county doing anything?
Yeah, I guess I can just say that yes, I was at that meeting, and that's my understanding too, that certain county staff members have been taken off of a work group that was put together in order to try and better serve our homeless neighbors. And I too am very concerned about that development. And I think that my understanding, that's really all I know. My understanding is that it's an ongoing conversation within the county, and I would agree that I hope we have a swift resolution, because I think we were making good progress together on a number of issues related to better serving our homeless neighbors. Thank you for that, Director Freeman. I will give a quick report. I think it was mentioned a lot of the conversation this week has been meeting with student groups about COVID-19 and how we can better educate residents on how to stay COVID safe, and also how just different ideas to try and provide more accountability for those who can't quite seem to get the message. And I do know that it sounds like there's going to be a lot of advocacy going into an ordinance that's coming back before the Board of Supervisors next week. And so I just wanted to thank the student leaders for their continued voice in trying to make sure that our community stays safe and healthy. I think that that's incredibly important thing to say, especially right now, when, as I think Director Thurlow mentioned earlier in the meeting, there are a lot of negative stereotypes about Isla Vista in the county at large. And so I just want to thank the students who are involved in that effort. Okay. Any other reports from members of the board?
Yes, I'll make a brief report. And I was also at that Isla Vista Recreation and Park District Board meeting with Jay and Spencer and perhaps other board members as well, public meeting. But I spoke in reluctant support of their proposed encampment plan. And that reluctant support is based in that I know that interventions are needed at times to protect the health and safety of the folks who are living in our parks. And those interventions do not need to be focused on maintaining order and control, but oftentimes that's housing services or behavioral wellness support, or getting folks food and basic supplies and making sure that people's basic needs are met and that they're living in a healthy conditions. So I was supportive of the plan as a starting point, and that it is implemented with community partners. But what I will say is it was very hard to voice support for that when I heard so many people coming to the meeting to really throw stones at our homeless neighbors, which was really sad, hearing people speak about our homeless neighbors in a very dehumanizing way. So I think it's important as we go forward that all of us working in the homelessness space in Isla Vista really do make sure that we're talking about our homeless neighbors in a way that embraces them as our neighbors and that looks out for their safety and well-being.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Are there any other reports from members of the board? See a hand from George.
Yeah, you know, as I get older, I tend to agree with Jay more and more. I don't know what's getting into me, but I would just, this isn't a report, this is just a reminder. On the one hand, I am so appreciative of our board members who are out in the community really making a difference for Isla Vista. On the other hand, I'd really remind all of our board members, this is a public body. And you as board members, any of us as board members, do not speak for the entire board unless so directed. There's getting to be confusion out in the community when one or two board members speak and it's taken as the position of the CSD, okay? Nobody on this board speaks for me or my constituents unless I so direct you. And so I would just remind everybody on the board, I applaud your energy, I applaud your enthusiasm, your passion, your deep souls, but be careful that you're not out there representing my constituents. Thank you.
George, I would just clarify, I think the concern was the way that Rec and Park staff had represented our position. But thanks for that. And I think we'll all continue to be vigilant to make sure that we let people know we're speaking for ourselves.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Rec and Parks thing is a total mess. And I appreciate you all for wading in. I've already waded in on that one, and I don't know. But just in general, I just want to let you know that out there in the general community, when one or two board members get up and they say they're from the CSD, there is a general feeling that you're speaking for the entire board. And so I just caution you that, you know, there's different board members, there's different constituencies, and just be cautious about that. But I end that with the bologna sandwich, which is, I really, really appreciate all the work that our board members are putting in to make this place better. And you know what? You've really made a difference. So thank you. That's my report. Stop it, Jay.
Okay, next we're going to go to reports from committees. Do we have any committee reports today? Okay, we will go to 5.3, report from District Council.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to just mention two things. We continue to monitor all of Governor Newsom's executive orders that come out and see if it impacts the district in any way. So far, it's a lot of clarifications in other parts of the state government, but nothing that pertains directly to IVCSD or its constituencies. We're keeping watch over everything. Whenever they come out, we do internally a report and analysis of it, and then we can filter that out. So it's of minimal cost, if any. Most of the time, we just do this as a general housekeeping measure to keep all of our clients informed on all of the executive orders. Second, as I informed the general manager earlier this week upon his request in regards to the payroll tax holiday that has been discussed by the president. That is an optional thing that the general manager can opt to do or not opt to do for employees of the district. So just if there was any question about whether that was mandatory, it's not. It's an option for employers, public or private, to make the decision on whether they want to implement that. And then third is to kind of give you a preview of something that I've been asked to put together by the general manager, more as a refresher for the board, but also as a point of information and education as more and more people are tuning into these meetings as to what it is this district can and cannot do. I often see the board members taking time to discuss these issues, and underlying it all is a question of, well, why can't you do more, or why should you do less, or whatever it is. And rather than the board members having to take their time to discuss the legal underpinnings of why and why not, I've been asked to put together a more fulsome presentation as to the district's enumerated powers and what that means. So that'll be something that'll be coming up. But just as a general matter for anybody who is on the meeting, feel free to look at Government Code Section 61250. That's 61250, the Government Code. This district is one of the few that has a special authorizing statute that discusses what it specifically can and cannot do. That was a function of the AB3 process. So it's very easy to get a snapshot of what the district's activated powers are, which describes what it can and cannot do within very specific defined areas. If Isla Vista CSD was the city council for the city of Isla Vista, the options that the board would have to be able to consider for possible policy changes would be much more robust, because as a city, you're a subdivision, a political subdivision of the state, and there are a lot of powers that are delegated to political subdivisions of the state, like counties and cities, that special districts, which are created by specific statutes, don't have. They are much more limited in what they can do. So I know a lot of people want to see more change, and they go to the board and say, well, why won't we do this and why don't we do that? And whenever questions are posited to me by the board, I always come back to, what does Government Code 61250 say about this? And how can we, using that as a basis, get to the policy goal that the board ultimately wants to consider? So just a quick note for people, a pointer to where they can look for more information. It's fairly straightforward, but I'm going to do a little bit more of an in-depth presentation the next meeting, in coordinating with the general manager. Again, as a refresher for the board and as a point of information and a source of information to look to for members of the public as they try and figure out best how to have their voice heard before the board of directors. And that's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ross, for that update. We'll go to report from General Manager.
Great. Not a lot more to report that wasn't on the agenda since it's been a holiday weekend and I had some days off since the last board meeting, but the homelessness task force, like I have nothing to add besides that it's in limbo, no clear answers. We hope to meet with the county soon and our supervisor to figure that out. We also, some housekeeping is the Zoom link is now the same link for all future board meetings. It was just one of the things that I had a list of how to make these meetings a little easier to find and access. So if you have any, just send them my way. As we get, free time here and there, mental space, I'll get them done. But nothing else to report that's not in the agenda.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that report. With that, the next meeting is September 22nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. It'll be right here on Zoom virtually, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Made by Freeman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Geis. Any public comment? All right, Jonathan.
Spencer?
Bob?
Yes, Director Brent?
Sorry, was someone trying to say something?
Yes, Spencer, this is Juan Camarena. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Juan.
Hey, just one thing for public comment. I just want to let CSD know and see if you guys could pass the information along to the community. Last week, we had an uptick of residential burglaries. So if we could send messaging through your social media to have the community lock their doors and report any type of thefts from their apartments or homes. But last week we had an uptick in residential burglaries. I just want to pass that along to you guys.
Thank you for that, Juan. I've seen, I think, remnants of that on social media. It's been a big topic of discussion. So, Jonathan, I know we'll be working with you to make sure we're putting out good information. So thanks for that. Okay, now we'll call the question on adjournment.
Director Brent?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Dr. Hedges?
Yes.
Dr. Thurlow?
Yes.
Dr. Geis?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We'll see you all on the 22nd.